continue off our gas safety segment, I will be speaking with Green Air Supply. Green Air Supply holds over 20 years of industry experience in offering expert knowledge on draft beer mechanics, gas separation technologies, and strong ties to the beverage industry, bringing to the market an environmentally friendly nitrogen and mixed gas source for the love of beer. Today, Green Air Supply is the premier nitrogen separator supplier in the USA, and I'm honored to get a chance to speak with President of Green Air Supply, Tom Hoare. Tom serves as an incredible resource for CO2Meter when it comes to all things nitrogen and the industry, and has been a huge advocate of CO2 safety monitoring solutions. I'm excited to gain his industry perspective today as we touch base on a common topic of gas safety in the workplace. To get started, could you tell us just a little bit more about Green Air Supply and really your role?
Sure, yeah. Green Air Supply has been around for 20 years. It was founded by my partner, Jesse McLaughlin, and he and I were good friends when I started my brewing career in '95, way back. So we would get awfully geeky about draft beer and draft beer quality. And of course, the gas, beverage gas part of that, CO2, nitrogen, were key parts of beverage quality, especially when it came to serving that draft beer. So we would get really in the weeds, and McDanton was new at that time. So we really became devotees of blended gas as a solution for draft beer dispense. So using a blend of nitrogen to essentially dilute CO2 and push beer properly from the keg to the faucet. And so when Jesse was beverage gas supplier for me at the brewery and many other people in the Northwest here, he found that there was no good solution for on-site nitrogen. There was the technology and the promise was there. CO2 delivery had become a lot easier with bulk CO2 systems, and the nitrogen side was still unsolved. So he set out and founded Green Air Supply, and then several years later, after I quit my brewing career, I jumped on board to grow Green Air Supply. And so 20 years for Green Air Supply and 18 for me.
You've always been somewhat in the industry, it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Jesse had a draft tech business on the side as well. It was something that he wanted to do for experience at least, and for the draft quality side of things. And I was rebuilding draft systems for the brewing company that I worked with, which was Bighorn Brewing Ram Restaurants. So they were in 8 states, and we grew 35 breweries and redid most of the draft systems, and just really got quite technical and proficient with draft system solutions at that point.
And I know that you did mention the nitrogen aspect. I want to get to that since we are talking about gas, obviously, and safety. So when it comes to nitrogen, of course, since that's your focus, from what perspective do you think people may not understand when it comes to nitrogen, or what they might not know, especially just from a safety perspective?
The misconception that I find in the draft world is that people think nitrogen is affecting the beer and changing it. And nitrogen is really there for what it doesn't do to beer. It doesn't go into solution nearly as easily as CO2. So really what it's doing is keeping the CO2 content the same in beer, instead of adding an element that changes the carbonation level. It's there to keep the carbonation level just consistent throughout the life of the beer. So as far as safety, though, if you're not using an on-site nitrogen system, you are using cylinders. It's not practical to have a cryo system. The safety of industrial gas cylinders, high-pressure cylinders in a restaurant environment, there's a ton of issues with that. They're heavy, they're dirty, they're tall, and they tip over, and wheeling them in and out of a restaurant with the environment in the back of the house of a restaurant is just not safe. having somebody who is a novice change a cylinder is dangerous as well. And they hold a lot of gas. There's 200 or 2,000 pounds of pressure in there and 200 plus cubic feet of gas in a typical nitrogen cylinder. So that can displace oxygen, and it doesn't have the same signals that CO2 does to, physiologically. You get a burning sensation or shortness of breath with CO2, and nitrogen is not quite as toxic, so it's not as easy to detect a room that is full of nitrogen and not oxygen. It's very uncommon for a on-site nitrogen to be able to fill a room like that, though, because it is pulling nitrogen out of the air. The byproduct is released, that's oxygen. So if the two are recombined, you're basically back to air. So there's a huge safety advantage to a low pressure on-site nitrogen system as opposed to high pressure cylinders.
I think that provided great perspective. I like how you mentioned detect too, because it is such a different gas. So there does need to be things in place, especially when you're using a certain amount of gas. I'm curious to know when it comes to fire inspectors, because on our side too with CO2, that's very common. They typically ask customers, to have a nitrogen detector or an oxygen deficiency monitor. You mentioned oxygen deficiency. Have you heard anything about this, Tom? I'm curious. I wanted to know if you did, obviously as the manufacturer also.
Yeah, we've heard a little bit about it, but not anything persistent as of yet.
Okay.
And we have, of course, a specialty in on-site nitrogen systems, and as I said, the byproduct and the product are air when they are recombined. So nitrogen as a pure gas is used typically in on-site cocktail or in-house cocktail programs, also coffee dispense and nitro coffee dispense.
Sure.
Otherwise, for beer systems, it's mixed with CO2. So I think a CO2 detector is adequate in those settings. But if you're using pure nitrogen, you would certainly want to be using on-site nitrogen and have basically the inability to purge a room of everything but nitrogen. So if you had a cylinder in it and you were able to dump that whole cylinder into a room, it certainly could cause a lot of danger.
Okay.
And so basically you'd want to know that that room didn't have enough oxygen to support life, or that it was full of nitrogen. So either perspective. But I haven't seen a huge call for that, because mostly the nitrogen is blended with CO2.
That's super insightful. Definitely different from the CO2 side, so I think that definitely helps speak when it comes to nitrogen specifically in those applications.
The reach-in coolers are typically where you find coffee, and those are not nearly as dangerous, obviously, because you're not entering them through a closed door and a door that can close.
So with the safety, Tom, is there one piece of advice when it comes to this industry overall? I know you have such a large area of industry expertise with this. Is there one thing that kind of sticks out that you would want people to know when it comes to safety in the field when they're dealing with gases such as these?
Yeah, I think the biggest advantage we could give our restaurant and bar owner and operator friends is to plan for gas, storage, and safety ahead of time. So it's often an afterthought, like, where are we going to put this system that is so critical for a draft system? And draft systems obviously are ubiquitous in restaurants and bars. They're kind of the lifeblood in a way, just as a soda system might be in a convenience store. A draft system is a large part of a profit center for a healthy bar and restaurant. And so we should be thinking about where these gas storage areas are and how they are kept safe, and then also planning for where that gas goes and keeping those areas safe so that people aren't making compromises when they think of how to plumb those systems.
Absolutely. And I know at Green Air Supply too, you all offer a lot of different resources, I think that I found too, that gives a little bit more insight to some of these customers in the field as well. Is that right?
Yeah, we do have some videos, YouTube, and some guides for these kind of things on our website. Yeah, greenairsupply.com.
Excellent. And Tom, just lastly, if someone did want to connect with you specifically, I know they can go to the website as well to learn more. Is there any other areas where someone could go just to learn a little bit more about Green Air?
Well, of course, social media channels, Instagram, but they're always welcome to reach out to us directly. Our 877 number will reach any one of us at the plant in Tacoma, and we're always happy to talk draft solutions and gas solutions as well.
Well, thank you so much, Tom, for that. Again, for just speaking with me a little bit today on the importance of gas safety, especially as it pertains to nitrogen in these industries with draft beer. I think you brought a lot of insight to myself and to everyone else as well, so we appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Morgan. It's always nice to talk to you.